Mike D coming up next. SEC Insider Hit. Presented by the Spray and Bedliners and Lift Kits at Rick's Pro Truck. Visit ricksprotruck.com. Also, Went McGee, the Mortgage Man. He'll shop the best rates for you. MortgageManMS.com. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. WRKS 1059 The Zone, ESPN. This is the Out of Bounds Show. And the SEC released their schedule yesterday, and guess what? LSU will host Mississippi State in Baton Rouge, probably with no fans. And if they have any, it'll be 20,000 max, but I don't think that's what it's going to look like. So we bring in LSU insider, WWL Radio TV, New Orleans. He is Mike Detillier on the Parish Brewing guest line. And, Mike, what is your takeaway on LSU hosting Mississippi State week 1?
Well, I'll be honest. Over the weekend, I got to talk to a couple of the assistant coaches, and I don't know who was their leak, but it was pretty good. All of them say, man, we fixing to play Mississippi State week 1, not Ole Miss, because that had been the long-time rumor that it would be Ole Miss. And one of them actually hit it right on the head. He said, we're going to start with State and end with Ole Miss, and they were right. So, it's interesting because first game for Leach to go up against Bo Pelini. Because, again, this game is all about players, but also, man, the matchups with coaches. And Bo Pelini in his second merry-go-round here at LSU matching up against Leach. I think that's very interesting to me in week 1 where Bo is stacked on defense. They got some talent on the defensive side of football. And, Mike has a certain system with him. He's not going to vary from that much. Because of Hill, I would run it a little bit more just because of his talent as a running back. But Mike is going to throw the football downfield. And it's going to be an interesting matchup. And just on a side note, that a young man, and he's the only player from the Bayou area and I would tease him about this, D. Martin, who was at Washington State under Leach, is now in the transfer portal. Here's a young man and I'm talking about Bayou country. He lives further south than I do. And he went to Washington State, and he's the first player that I know of from this area to ever end up at Washington State. Yesterday he announced that he's in the transfer portal. I wonder a little bit, and I don't know if there's any room at the end at, so to speak, at Mississippi State. But, boy, he was a heck of a football player for the Cougars. That, Mike's going to whip it around, man. He's going to throw it, and you know it. So you better come prepared.
What? I didn't realize that Tay Martin was from the South Louisiana area.
What? Oh, my God. Yeah. He went to Ellender High School in Houma, which is about 20 minutes from me. It's west and south of me. But it's literally about 20 minutes from my home in Lafourche Parish. So, yeah. And, I would tease him because he won the biggest kind of Bayou Award here a few years back. And I told him, listen, I don't know if you know this. I don't ever remember a guy from this area going to Washington State. And he said, well, he had an uncle. He said, my uncle said the exact same thing. He's a big 6'3", 195-pound wideout, originally committed to Tulane, and he was a tremendous basketball player. I mean, really good basketball. First time I ever saw him as an athlete, it was a basketball game, and he turned out to be an outstanding receiver at Washington State. And so, man, if there's room, I get out the papers and sign him. That guy 1 year, a really good football player for State if they can get him.
Wow. Mike Detillier on the Out of Bounds show. So Mike, LSU should win the game. They'll be a heavy favorite. They have more talent. However, they will not have that 100+ thousand in the stands. Handicap, I mean, that's a little bit of an advantage for MSU. Handicap that for me.
Yeah, it's strange, and I've talked to Coach O about this. Sean Payton brought it up to us about just how weird that is. And, you rarely hear on TV like the change in cadence and changing of plays, and you'll be able to hear that now in an empty stadium. Zach Streep and I were talking about this from a player standpoint, playing in a stadium that's empty like that holds 100,000 people. From a player standpoint, you looking around, it's like this big cavern and acoustics and everything else. Like you said, it's going to be weird, but weird for both sides. And you lose that little bit of home field advantage. Certainly at LSU, it's a big home field advantage because of that crowd noise that you have, especially if you get in that end zone where those students are. Man, you can barely hear yourself think more than anything else. So, but it's going to be different. It's going to be different at these home stadiums because you don't have that. And I don't know how big of a difference it'll be, but I do know one thing: if you're driving downfield and you in an opponent's end zone and they got all these students, with a little bit of Pepsi Cola rolling in them, and I say a little bit, I know what the rest of it is. Man, that's a big difference from a sound standpoint. Big difference.
All right, so if LSU has a weakness this year, what will it be, Mike?
Well, the big question mark is offensive line. I hear all these guys nationally talk about Miles Brennan. Well, Miles will be fine. Listen, he can't be Joe Burrow. That's the one. Just be the best Miles Brennan you can be. And that's what I think they've tried to tell Miles. Hey, listen, you don't have to be Joe Burrow. Man, we'd love to have the second Joe Burrow, but necessarily you can't be him. You got to be the best Miles you can be. He can do some things that Joe could maybe not do as well, and Joe had some things that he could do better than Miles. But I think it's offensive line. How quickly that comes together. I'm a big one of the things I do like preseason, I look at who's returning and who's not up front. I think it's big. It's the last thing to come together on a football team, offensive line play. 5 guys working as one. The cohesiveness of that. Working in rhythm together. We saw it last year at Saints practice. We got told about it. Well, Sean wasn't happy, but it was true. Eric McCoy, he was sort of just getting around the form, okay? And the rhythm of Max Unger to snap a ball was totally different than Eric McCoy. Man, they had a couple practices, and this was early on, where Teron Armstead and Andrus Peat, they were like 3 yards downfield, and McCoy was still holding the ball. That does take a little bit of time to come together as a unit. For LSU now, you have Liam Shanahan at center. Liam's never played center in a college game. Now, he has started at Harvard at guard and tackle. You're going to find out them cats in the SEC, ain't Harvard and Yale. That's all I can tell you. It's a lot bigger and tougher guys than that. And how well he handles the physicality. The middle part, he got that down. That part won't be an issue. The physicality part. Then the only returning starter LSU has up front is Austin Deculus. And Austin's going to miss a little time. He's got a little injury, and he's missing some time. So now they're working in other people at that right tackle position. Now, Austin should be back for that game, but Marcus Dumerville, a true freshman, and Charles Turner, a redshirt freshman, he came to LSU, and I asked him how much he weighed. He's a big 6'5" kid from IMG. And he said, a 248. I said, you got on that scale and it said 248? He said, no, I got on the scale and it said 237. He's now up to the 280s.
Wow.
But but still, you talk about a 6'5" guy who's playing offensive line. Now he's playing some center and some tackle. And then Darry Rosenthal's playing left tackle. He played some last year, but I think in 6 games, but because of injury and suspension to Sadiq. And Ed Ingram is the back. He was a starter as a freshman, then sat out a year. Everybody thought he'd come back in, be the starting guard, but they didn't give that memo to Adrian McGee because he beat him out of there. So, and the other starting guard is Chason Hines, who was a backup last year. Man, you got a lot of guys that haven't worked together as a unit. And how that comes together, for me, is the biggest question mark for LSU. They are loaded up front 2 deep, and at some areas 3 deep along the defensive line. With the addition of Jabril Cox at linebacker, I think they're really strong there. Also, cornerback, safety, they've got some talent, young talent, but they got some depth. And so I think the big question mark is offensive line. And it's the one area I just did in fact, I'm almost finished with it. It's a look at the positions in college football have sustained the most injuries over the last 7 years. You want to guess where 1 and 2 are? Guard, tackle. You better build up some depth there because I'm just telling you, you're going to lose people because of injuries. It's the 2 biggest areas of injury loss in college football. Offensive guard, 1, offensive tackle, 2. It's pretty close, but guard is going to edge out tackle for that spot. And the 3 spot, I'd have to give you a couple of guesses for you to get it. It's not maybe what you would think, but it's safety. And the reason why is the way they use safeties today. You got some of them up on along the line of scrimmage like a defensive end or a linebacker. Some of them are deep in coverage. I mean, they're used all over the place. And on defense, safety is the one position that has more injuries than any other on the defensive side of football.
Wow. Mike Detillier, WWL Radio TV New Orleans. He joins us on the Parish Brewing guest line. You're listening to ESPN 105.9 The Zone. All right, so if the weakness for LSU will be O-line until they get it up and running, according to Mike. Loaded on D, and we'll see how quickly maybe that offensive staff can mesh together with Linehan and Ensminger. So let's switch gears here.
Well, Bo, let me throw this out to you. It was, this is just started the first day of practice yesterday. And already Ensminger's raising 3 kind of sand because Bo threw a blitz out at him yesterday they hadn't practiced against. So already, man, it's fall drills when the coaches are sort of squawking at one another about, wait a minute, you wasn't supposed to be pulling that blitz stuff on us, day one. So, man, that to me tells me that's a good feeling because players, they're going to complain about the heat and the humidity. Coaches are going to complain about other coaches doing stuff that they shouldn't have been doing. Football season's close when that happens.
That's right. I like it. Mike Detillier on the Out of Bounds show. All right, let's switch gears here for a second. I know you have a relationship with this guy, but he just hasn't been successful as a head coach. I think he's a good defensive coordinator. Fortunate he was with Saban early. But Will Muschamp, I just think he's on the ropes, Mike. I mean, he was at Florida, which is a blue blood, couldn't get it done. He's at South Carolina, 4-8 last year. What's your take? Is at the end of the day, Will just a good DC, not a head coach?
Yeah, I think bottom line, that's good. That's the case. I think Will had some opportunities to maybe do something there a little bit different, and it got away from him. And now, I mean, look what's in your backyard. You talk about the biggest lion or one of them in the jungle, with Clemson right there. And so you got to go outside the state for players, and because the top players in that area, they headed or in that or area are going to go to Clemson. He's in a tough role in that spot, and I think he's a tremendous defensive coach. He brings a fiery temperament to the game, but in the end, I think he's better with a smaller unit than he is with a big unit. And so what I mean by that is I think he can connect on the defensive side to football. Offensively, though, he would have to turn that completely over to someone that in today's type of offense that could get it good at going, and I don't see that. And I didn't see that at Florida either. It's the same. It's almost carbon copy of what's happened to him at South Carolina and what happened to him at Florida. And I agree with you. Some people are just better assistant coaches or coordinators than they are head coaches. Mm-hmm. They handle the smaller room and motivate the smaller room better than the big room. And listen, that was question mark about Orgeron at one time.
Sure.
Could he handle the big room? And until, he made the change with his offensive staff and gave Steve more autonomy to do what he wanted to do, bringing in Joe Brady, that sort of thing. I think that was a question mark about Ed. And I think it's the big question mark about Will. Right. Defensively, he's going to be there, but can he handle the big room as a head coach?
No, I don't think so. Mike Detillier on the Out of Bounds show. We just received a text from an LSU fan listening. And, Mike, do you expect the LSU offense to be a little more conservative this year because the offensive line will need to get up and running and because it's not Joe Brady, it's Linehan?
Hell no. They running the same offense they ran a year ago. They have some new wrinkles. It won't be conservative. Now, early on, will you try to protect your quarterback a little bit more by running it? Maybe so. But I'm just telling you, from what I've seen and from what I've heard from Steve, from Scott, from Ed, it's not going to be conservative. They are going to run the same offense that they ran a year ago. Now, here's the deal. Joe Burrow made that thing work, okay? You can have the same plays and you can have the same philosophy, but will the results be the same? And again, Miles, I think they'll spread the field more, throwing it deeper downfield because of Brennan's arm strength. I think, if anything, you'll see a little different. And it's something Steve has brought up to me different times about I want to throw the deep ball anywhere from 5 to 7 times downfield. And when we throw it, make sure you connect on it because we've broken down and seen tape where you've got guys wide open on plays, misfire. Either the receiver drops it or the quarterback overthrows it. He said, we got to have those hits. I think you will see LSU throw the football a little bit more deeper downfield. Joe was great in that short, intermediate part of the field. I think with Miles, because of that whip he's got, man, they're going to try to throw it deeper downfield. And they have a tight end and a freshman in Eric Gilbert. And I'll be honest, I ain't seen nothing like him at LSU. I've seen guys like that in the NFL, but I've not seen a player like that at LSU playing tight end. And, Scott was at Detroit when they had Calvin Johnson. And one of the things, he was saying is, we've brought some of those concepts of what we would do with Calvin one-on-one and what he calls deep middle or middle of the field getting the football to Gilbert. Man, if there's a freshman on this team that I grew up around guys with horses, okay, and many people know my neighbor was Shane Sellers from about 13 years, and he became one of the elite horse jockeys in the world in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s before he had a knee injury. He could tell within, just a couple of minutes, man, that horse is something special. And, when you look at athletes, and sometimes it's different, but there's always one that you say, my goodness, look at that guy. It's Eric Gilbert at tight end. Well, I have not seen anything with that type talent to run athletically, size-wise, just how smart he is as a football player to pick this up. And he's something special. And Thad Moss was a really good player, really, really was. And he changed the tight end position here. But I think Eric Gilbert takes this to another level.
Wow. All right. We'll leave it there. If LSU has a big-time tight end, talking about a handful. Mike Detillier on the Out of Bounds Show, at Mike Detillier on Twitter, WWL Radio, TV, New Orleans. Mike, have a super week. We'll talk next week. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Mike Detillier on LSU and Mississippi State, week 1 in Baton Rouge. No fans. And LSU's weakness is their offensive line. But evidently they have a superstar stud at tight end. I could see him catching 7 balls for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns.
I can't wait for Scott Linehan to hand it off every first down all season.
You're not buying it.
I don't buy anything Scott Linehan says.
Okay. That's fair enough. I get it.
Your track record, what Bill Parcells said, your record is what it says it is.
Yeah.
You are what your record says you are. I mean, Linehan is who he is. Now,
what is Linehan? In his 50s?
A bad OC.
I understand
I'm sorry. Yeah, I think he is. The question is, if Ensminger is really in charge, then LSU has a chance. I didn't think Ensminger was in charge last year. I mean, Joe Brady seemed to be running the offense. Now, you could say Ensminger was the senior figure and it was him authorizing everything, but I think Brady was the architect. He's the mad scientist.
Right.
What's going to happen when the scientist isn't actually mixing the potions?
All right, fair enough. The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by the new store in Gluckstadt, Ace Bolt and Screw, powered by DeWalt Tools. By the way, they're giving away they've got a cool DeWalt giveaway going on. You can check it out on Facebook. Search Ace Bolt and Screw. But they have a new store and new shop in Gluckstadt, Madison County. Ace Bolt and Screw, powered by DeWalt Tools. Of course, they still have their place in downtown Jackson, Tupelo in Atlanta. And they just opened their new place yesterday on Monday. Ace Bolt and Screw in Gluckstadt, Madison County. Ace Bolt and Screw, powered by DeWalt Tools. Go to Facebook. You'll want to jump in that giveaway. Ace Bolt and Screw on Facebook. Ace Bolt and Screw, powered by DeWalt Tools. Hour number 3 coming up.